Testing 1 2. Test yours.
Testing 1 2.
Beautiful. I think that's those wavelengths
Are good.
are good. So wherever you are, just keep that shit there.
Fantastic. Yeah.
The Made Man podcast, where you can get your dick sucked for free.
Well, I'm Ben Hunter. Welcome to the Made Man podcast. With me today, I have Sam Hunter, no relation. Sam, if you could just introduce yourself and tell us a little bit about who you are and why you're on the podcast today.
Well, I guess if I've made it to the Made Man podcast, I am a self-made man, which feels good. Just the fact that you're putting me in the category of a man is good too, because I'm 32 years old and people still say, "Oh, you're so young, so fucking young. You got all the time in the world," which I still believe. But I've been making music and pursuing my dreams for 14 years. So if that's a little bit less than half my life, and I'm already a self-made man, I think that's pretty cool. But I'm an entertainer. I've been in Sydney entertaining. I've been performing for over 12, 13 years, recording, writing, putting music out, different formats, different projects, if you like. And I'm just really starting to feel like I'm in my stride now that my business is going well. There's a lot of work here. There's an abundance of work in Sydney, and I feel like I'm motivated enough now and disciplined enough to start helping other people, but also projecting and
Yeah.
leveling up.
Yeah, leveling up, fantastic. Yeah,
Leveling up, scaling up. If it's
I love
business,
that. Yeah, I love that. If you can just rewind back 14 years, and if I was to ask you what your motivation was initially, or what your passion was that drove you to make a start, to actually see a beginning for your, I guess, music career. You see yourself as a musician, but what would be that driving motivator for you to initially even begin the journey as a musician?
Mine was definitely always doing something, so having a purpose. And I was a football player, soccer player for a long time because my dad was doing it. And I think at the point where I realized that I needed to do something bigger than myself, bigger than the story I had already created for myself, that was the point that I realized that it was music. Because I loved it as well. I was always writing my feelings down as a kid. From as far as back as I can remember, I was writing short stories. I loved English. I loved words. And when I moved over to Switzerland and I wasn't playing soccer as much anymore, and that ended, I felt terrible. The only respite I had was a couple of my friends, and we were learning about hip hop culture in the 90s, studying it, getting involved in it, and we really, I truly convinced myself that I was already doing it when I recorded my first song. And I think it was a sure thing. So for me, I think the muse or the spark was I didn't give up my dreams. I was always a dreamer. So whatever I had to do to make something happen, whatever it was going to be, I'd give it a crack. But the one thing I know is that I've never put music aside for anyone. And I've never listened to naysayers. That's when I knew back then when I was 13, 14 years old that I could do this. And it was going against the grain too. It wasn't, oh, Sam's a football player because everyone's been a football player in his family. Once I actually had my own identity, then I started really running with it.
So, what were some of the influences back then, and possibly they're the same that you have in your life now today, but what were some of the influences back then that helped you make that decision and feel confident enough in yourself, to then move into music?
That's a really good question. I think I was influenced by the culture everyone looked like they were having fun. And whether it was, I wasn't necessarily influenced that time in Switzerland by the West Coast music. I didn't heavily immerse myself in the beef. If you talk about hip hop, Biggie, Tupac, um, of NWA, Ice Cube, all those beefs, Jay-Z, Nas. I wasn't as interested in that as I was interested in the art form of creating something from nothing and and entertaining people and also having it on record. Those were the biggest um, I, not influences as much I would say drawings because that was as a 14-year-old kid, you're influenced by a lot and you don't even know what it is. So with hip hop, it was the show, it was the lights, the camera, the action, the music videos, and sort of the glitz and glam. And I always thought in my mind, and I still feel, it's not about being famous for me anymore, but I consider myself to be that person, to be an influencer. And it's funny because we live in a day and age where social media has taken over, and most influencers you see really aren't doing anything for the world. They're not giving back. So that was something I kept in my mind too. Once I had status or whatever, if you want to call it money, fame, I was going to be a Robin Hood type guy, and that was a big driving force. But most definitely, I was influenced by Mos Def. He was one of my favorite, and Master Ace, because I remember seeing them in Switzerland at their shows, and I was like, I can do this.
Common as well.
Common, yeah, Common was huge, and I really liked 50 Cent before Switzerland. I had Get Rich or Die Trying on. Remember those old fucking Discmans?
Yeah.
And that was just on the bus, on rotation. Like I never had before training any point I could listen to music, and this was before I even started writing music. I was listening and influenced by music, so it was a no-brainer when I decided, hey, let's fucking do this. And my first rap name was Little Hunter, and I ran with that. It was in an era where Lil Wayne was the biggest Little, and then there was Lil Yachty, Lil Red, or Lil Pump, all these motherfuckers.
Lil Bow Wow.
Yeah, and I grew out of that. I guess Lil Bow Wow was the first one, but I grew out of that because it's an evolution. Ben, like it's an evolution as business is anything. Yeah.
Yeah, that's great. I mean, one thing that interests me and the listeners would like to know is, as a predominantly English speaker, growing up in a non-English speaking country, did you find that was a bit of a barrier for you starting off your career, rapping or, performing in English compared to, people that you were growing up around, speaking German or Swiss German, French, Italian?
Yeah, well, that's actually a great question because, I mean, I was at an international school, so there was really only four in Switzerland, and I thought that gave me an edge because there was my market, and I didn't know shit about business back then, but I was like, that's my market. So if I can somehow create a mixtape or all these songs, and MySpace was big back then,
Yeah.
even more before Facebook, I was like, I'm going to put my songs on there. So when I go out to parties or whatever the fuck happens, I will always tell people like, hey, check this out. I recorded this. And before I started meeting German, Swiss rappers like Ende, who was an amazing freestyler, and Rob, who took me into Devoted Poets, and Mellow Moody, or he was called Merlin. He was called Batman back then. He's now actually got a couple of businesses around the world. He's just fucking smoking heaps of weed and growing weed and selling it. But he's more like he's gone from like a basketball guy to, remember And1?
Yeah.
And1 was fucking huge. So he was on the Swiss And1 team.
Wow.
Then he was like into hip hop and he was huge. And I idolized these guys. And then I was in a rap group with them.
Yeah.
So it wasn't a barrier for me because I was Australian and I was likable. I was the guy around Zurich. I would walk around town and everyone would be like, yo, was ist los, man? Ist die australianische Musiker, man. Ist ein Rapper. Hey, that's fucking Little Hunter, man. And, that gave me clout.
Yeah.
That's what they say now.
Yeah.
That gave me fucking more
Yeah.
fire. And it wasn't until I got back to Australia that I was like, oh, fuck, I'm no one again,
Right.
which was good. So for me, it was always being the underdog and just going, you know, fuck this, I'm going to prove. And then I spent like 8 years in Australia getting paid nothing for the hundreds and hundreds of shows I was doing.
Yeah.
And all people could complain about is, why do you have an accent?
Yeah.
And in my mind, it was like, well, I've fucking traveled and I've been around the world and I have an accent because I was living around international people. And I also like it. I like performing in this style, you know, and it's bigger than Australia. It's bigger than Australian hip hop. It's bigger than
Sure.
it was just, for me, I'd never thought any of that was barriers. And I don't believe in barriers anymore.
Yeah.
Because that doesn't help you grow, you know? What about, I have a question for you.
Shoot.
You know, how do you see yourself growing with this podcast?
I mean, sure, let's try this out.
And does it feel purposeful, you know?
Yeah, I mean, look, I feel as though growth is important, and you know, you touched on your passion and your motivation for starting what you started, and you know, for me, this podcast helps to convey a message and get out a message, not just for myself but for the interviewers that I bring on the show, to then understand a process of where they started, the beginning, because I believe the beginning of anything is the hardest and it's the most important.
Side note, just call them guests or friends.
Guests or friends of the show.
Yeah.
And then, have an explanation or a method or a recipe of how you did that and how it can be translated into anything that anyone wants to do. So whether you be in construction, whether you be a creative, such as yourself, a musician, an entertainer, a cook, a Forex trader, a day trader, crypto trading, cutting men's hair, whatever it is.
Well, I see it. I see the vision. What's the formula, and what's the story behind it? Those are two crucial things.
So the story behind it is, I've always, for myself, seen myself a certain way and have a high self-esteem for myself and a large ego. And by understanding what other people have done or what they've been through, I can better understand what I'm doing with my life and how I can, explain that to others and help them. This is about helping each other. And this is about, being comfortable to do what you want to do. Being comfortable in your own skin, and also, most importantly, taking that risk and having a shot. That's what this is all about, really.
Yeah, we were having a great conversation the other day, and I think I turned to you, and this is the first time I heard this was I can't remember his name, but he's a great speaker. Denzel Washington loves him, but he took a page from his book when he did a speech and said, imagine the ghosts of your past coming to you on your deathbed and saying, hey, why didn't you try that? Why did you give up?
Yeah.
How would you really feel in that moment?
Yeah.
I get chills down my spine when I talk like that, because up your spine, down your spine, whatever, all over your fucking body, because
I'm getting chills down my spine right now.
Yeah. I'm getting an enlarged fucking prostate. But no, that's the real, the gravity of life, right?
Yeah.
You speak to Papa Louie, right?
Sure.
He gave me some amazing advice at the wedding. He was like,
Papa Louie, that's your granddad, right?
Yeah, he's a sick cunt. Been through a lot, but he said, my life has been great and it's been hard. And the hard times were the ones that I cherish the most, because I am a stronger person for it. And that teaches you to appreciate the times that aren't as hard, because you know that how hard it was to get to these good times. And all that it really is how you perceive it and receive it. And it's your attitude. It's your attitude towards living. Do you want to live, or do you want to just fucking lay down and die?
Yeah.
Because and then he went on to explain that you look at like disease and mental health, just illness, ailments in humans. Most people when they're 60 to 70 are getting ready to die. And I already knew where I was going with it because I've seen it, and you can see it in society, mainly from, the boomer era, if you want to call it. I don't really like splitting up people by Gen X,
Sure.
Gen Z, and all. I think it's fucking bullshit. I think there's too many labels in this world. But the one thing I took out of that was you can really live. But he said, like, because systematically people are getting ready to die because they're retired and they're not working anymore, they just start to deteriorate.
Sure.
And it starts with the mind and then the body and then the soul goes. And, that's your podcast, and this idea sounds purposeful. Sounds great. And to be honest, it's creative.
Well, that's what we're all about, right? And bringing it back to, you talk about where you are now and your success being 14 years in the making. I mean, it's all relevant, and it's all perspective, depending on which way you look at it. But if you could look and talk to the person you were 14 years ago, knowing what you do know now, what would you tell Sam Hunter?
Yeah, little Hunter back then.
Little Hunter back then.
I would go straight up to him and I'd be like, put that fucking weed down.
Yeah.
Hey, occasionally, recreationally, cool. Stop chasing things so much.
Yeah.
I would say focus on your fucking health, Sam, because get in that gym, eat right.
Yeah.
And don't give away too much too soon. And work hard on a plan and actually do more research, because 14 years, as much as I learn and as much as I feel like I've achieved, I feel like I'm really only starting now. And that's okay, because that's my story. And I'm only 32. I know 32-year-olds who are in my exact same position, in their 20s, who are prospective future influencers and musicians and stuff like that, mainly rappers, who gave it away at 25, 26 because they got girlfriends, or, they started settling down and they said, hey, like, it's not paying the bills and I need to get serious. And it's like, no, I didn't choose to fucking give up, and I feel better for that decision. So, I think those are some crucial things. Focus on your health. Definitely plan more. You have to take things a little bit seriously for what you're doing before you start to have a bit more fun.
I agree.
That's definitely the weed thing, though.
Well, putting drugs aside, a question I have for you is, outside of your career, and it's been a successful one, mind you, in your personal life, if you could summarize a list of things that you strive for, but telling me and our audience today, what is that number one thing that you strive for in your personal life, outside of your career, that you wish you could be better with, or be better at, or wish you had that in your life?
I was automatically going, like, saying, like, passion and love, but then you just flipped the question. I like that. I would definitely say discipline, because as disciplined and as routine as I can be, I indulge. I think learning to have more discipline.
So it's not a female, it's discipline.
Yeah, no, but I think, like, all of those things that I like to indulge in can't fall under that. So
sure.
That's why I chose the word discipline, because if you use discipline in the right way, then you can really benefit from it.
Yeah, good. Awesome.
All those things that fall. Like, I was chasing women, of course, for a long, long time, and hey, that's a part of being a boy to a man to
sure.
whatever. But are they the right ones?
Well, if I knew the answer to that, I'd be a millionaire, right?
Yeah.
I'd still be in a relationship. It's good to see you open up, Sam, man. And, so much of what you've said on today's episode has been, if anything, it's been very 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 truthful and very very felt. You know, the emotion that I hear coming out of you is very transferable, and you know, I think I speak for our audience that just hearing you and your experience in life is very touching and very admirable. And I wish you all the best in your career. And one thing I will ask just before we close out is, there's a lot of people watching today, and there's a lot of people that would be in a situation or at a present moment where they're at a jumping off point and they want to know whether they should pursue this or not. If you had one bit of advice, or even maybe two bits of advice for an upstart, what would they be? What would you tell these people?
I mean,
listen, people.
I feel like anyone in my position would say the same thing, and it's so fucking cliche. It's the Nike thing. It's just do it, but back yourself and believe in yourself. And like you said, taking risks. You just gotta. You have to do something. I think we live on a planet where you can't know one thing until you've known the opposite. So if you've never done something before, and you really want to do it, don't listen to we live in a world where the word advice comes from everywhere. And when someone really goes, "Oh, look, I've got some advice for you," you don't have to listen to people.
That's right.
Agreed. And also, finance. Learn about fucking taxes and shit.
It's something they don't teach in school.
No, it's something they don't teach you in school.
There's a reason they don't teach.
It's so fucked up, really.
That's
the
right.
whole system. You're just
agree,
oh, I'm sorry. Would you like me to do anything else for you, motherfuckers?
Yeah.
But once you learn it, then there's things that you want to unlearn, and there's things that you want to just keep going. I say, fuck it too. Let go a bit. Just let go and just fucking do it.
I agree, man. I agree.
I'm sick of this fucking bullshit. People going, "Oh, I'm gonna do this," and then, I don't hang around people like that too much anymore because I just don't have time for it.
Yeah, it's good. I agree.
Yeah.
And
this has been a fucking awesome interview.
Thanks, man. Thank you for coming on the show. And just as well, one thing that I like to do and get a start off is, who's your favourite sports team and why?
Manchester United, because I grew up in the 90s.
Yeah. What was your best memory of Manchester United in the 90s?
Well, we won the first treble.
Of course.
But also, no, it was mainly the attitude of the players and the spirit, the camaraderie, and they were having fun.
Yeah.
Now I watch Man United and they're not having fun. They look very serious, and it comes from the coach, Ten Hag. But other than that, one of my favorite sports people in sports, fucking Mike Tyson. He has turned his life around, and that's just a testament to the human spirit.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter what you've done in the past. That motherfucker was in jail more often than not, but you can't really blame him because he came from the street, and he came from a really deprived area of New York where bad shit was happening around you. So you kind of are you are of your environment, and you are of your era.
I agree. Nature versus nurture kind of thing.
Yeah.
Awesome,
and look at him now, dude. He's fucking about to fuck Logan.
Knock Logan Paul the fuck out.
Paul out. Yeah.
That's someone I'd love to interview, man. Anyway,
you'll do it.
Yeah.
Put it up on there on that board.
That's it, bro. All right, man.
Bitch.
Well, thanks for having you on today, man, and all the best.
Yeah, you
Love
too,
you, brother.
man. Love you.